thank everyone for joining this wonderful program. I especially want to thank my mom, Reverend BC Chukudile, for the opportunity to speak, my own experience as a pastor's daughter, a minister's daughter. And I think it's a very, very sensitive one. And I've never really gotten to speak about being a pastor's child or daughter. I never even really talk about it because while I was trying to prepare, in fact, when mommy told me about it, I was a bit hesitant. But because I told the Lord, I said, Lord, when you begin to give me opportunities now, because I've shied away so much from responsibilities that has to do with the ministry and the things of God. And I just was telling the Lord some weeks ago that, Lord, if you give me opportunity, just give me that chance to begin to speak about my experiences and all the things you've taught me and still teaching me, and which I know will be a blessing to other people, that I would jump at it. And so when mommy asked me this, I was a bit shocked because I felt that's very sensitive. I don't think I really want people to come into my space because I'm someone very, very, very private, and I keep my space very closed. However, because the Lord has created that opportunity, I'm jumping at it. So I just want to say thank you, mommy, for it. Now I have a disclaimer. My mom kept saying I should use some of my experiences, which I would chip in, but I realized in my little research that many of the experiences of ministers' children are very, very similar. It was almost the same thing I've been through, or somebody I know, a friend I know that was also a minister's child has talked about or has been through. So just going to jump right into it. So this is where it all begins. As you can see the pictures, this is very funny. When I saw it, I just began to smile because this is like a young, minister, maybe let's say an evangelist, and it just maybe newly wedded or about to marry this.
I can't see that screen.
We can't see your screen.
No, we cannot see the screen yet.
Uh-oh.
It's you we are seeing. We are seeing you, not your screen.
Oh no.
Go on to share.
Again.
We are seeing her now.
Okay, I need to share. I did share, but I need to share my post disabled person. So, mom, I think you need to accept.
Oh, she has to be made a co-host.
Yeah, she needs to be co-host before
you have to make her a co-host.
Isn't she?
I am a co-host.
She is a co-host. Yep. Hang on, let me check again.
Share, boy, say.
Make, yeah. Okay, I'm just making you a co-host now.
Okay.
Let's see.
So now go back to share screen and then click on your presentation.
Let's see. I'm trying to. Okay, so it's about to. Okay, good. Let's see. So I think it's this one. And let's see.
Okay. You are seeing. Yeah, you started sharing.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, can we all see this picture?
No, it's blank.
Oh, yes.
It's loading.
It shows that share. Oh, yeah, now we can see it. We see it now, yeah.
Okay. All right. That's fine. So this picture just clearly shows a young man, a minister, and probably his new bride or fiance, and she's so in love, and he's literally just thinking about ministry and thinking about the cross and the things he needs to do for God. So that's why I said this is where it all begins, because it actually starts from the orientation of the father in particular, because usually, ministry, most of the ministries usually is, many of the times it's usually the men, and then their wives join them in it many of the times. So Proverbs chapter 22 verse 6 says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. So this is a very familiar scripture, and we all know it. And but you know what, we come to realize many of the times, as Pastor Baron said, you have all these things. You say, oh, you're going to do this for the gospel and all of that. And yeah, when I have my children, they're also going to follow in it. And then when you become parents, you realize it's really not that easy. Even just being a parent without being in the ministry is hard enough. And then having to carry the load of, also ministering to the body of Christ comes with huge, huge responsibilities. So, but people would say, what better environment would it be than for children to be from a minister's home. I mean, it's always going to be the scriptures. They're always going to live according to the scriptures. But many of the times we've seen in many occasions that the children really, really get to suffer a lot of things. So we're going to be mentioning just a few of the many things. And one of the very common ones, where's the slide now? See. Not moving. Okay. You can see this picture. People say things like, you're supposed to be the good boy and girl. It's like a tag. It's like a tattoo. You're not supposed to be like every other kid. And for example, like me, I remember vividly when I was in GS2, and we were in class that day, and there was a guy, I can't even remember his name, John, and he was doing some very funny things, and we were all laughing at him. And then the teacher looked at me and said, "You, Felicia, are you supposed to join them to laugh? Are you not a pastor's daughter? Should you be?" And I can still remember it like yesterday, and it was so hurtful. And I'm like, why can't you just allow me to be like other children, just laugh and make jest? And I remember many times they would talk about me in school, and the teachers would say, "And you're a pastor's daughter, and your mother came to minister in my church. Why are you talking too much? Or why are you, whatever it is," they would say. And it was just a very, very daunting and traumatic experience that by the time I finished my junior secondary school, I said, you know what, as I'm going to my senior secondary school, I'm not going to tell anybody. And then sort of thankfully, I went to the eastern part of Nigeria where nobody knew. It seemed like nobody really knew me there. So I could be like a normal child. I didn't even mention I was a pastor or a minute. I wanted to just be normal. And I felt a bit of freedom because I could now be like every other person, go to school normally, talk with everybody and be. But many of the times, if we grow up in the environment and you go to school in that environment where your parents have ministry, it's very difficult to have a normal childhood or to just be like a normal child. There's always that, don't you know your father is a pastor? Why are you behaving like that? Why are you talking like that? Why are you hanging out with that? And they don't, and it begins to affect the child's self-confidence because that my parents are my parents. I am me. I'm still discovering life. I may not even end up in the ministry eventually. These are the things that children struggle with. So and this can be very frustrating, very demoralizing, having to struggle with, you're already trying to discover your identity. You even know who you are, just from being a child. Now you're becoming an adolescent. You're going through that one, and then you're still dealing with the fact that people say you should be this way, or you're supposed to act this way, you're supposed to dress that way. It's a whole lot for young people to actually deal with and to unpack. And many of the time, this is where rebellion starts growing in person. Like, this is, after a while, it just becomes like, this is just way too much. I want to be me. I'm just going to stop minding what people say. And that's where many of the children begin to go the other way because they just got enough of it. So yeah. Um another challenge will be there's no room for children to, like I said, be children and to have failures and mistakes. I believe even adults, we all make mistakes. We all make it. Even the Bible says no one is actually righteous. No one. But many of the time, ministers' children have to struggle with so much of, no room for you to even fail. Sometimes some children don't do well in math, but they were like, how can you not know math? Your dad, I mean, and they're like, well, if I don't know maths, I don't know maths right now. So, there's so many things that children have to deal with, which I feel like it's not supposed to be there. And it just begins to, and little by little, slowly by slowly, is breaking. Their confidence is breaking, is, building walls of defense. They don't trust people. They just hate anything that has to do with God and ministry. Is a whole lot of things. And it also stems from the fact that because the parents are also quite busy, they don't have time to nurture them and let them know, okay, yes, your dad and mom are ministers, we're serving God and we're doing this because we love Jesus. I believe if parents really took time to really, you know, talk to their children and nurture them, letting them know that, yeah, it might, working with God might be a bit challenging. Even people might laugh at us, your parent, but just remember, I think it's more reassuring the children about the love of Christ, because if everything is centered around the love of Christ, it really changes a lot of things. You don't feel so much of the weight of being a pastor's child, and also the parents, because of the weight of the responsibility. Sometimes we see how weigh so heavily on our parents. And we're like, no, we don't want to have any of this. But now people are beginning to understand that if you actually let the love of Christ overshadow you, the weight, it shouldn't be. Even the Bible says that his yoke is easy and his burden is light. So these are the things that make children detest wanting to do anything with the ministry, because you know parents don't have enough time to nurture them, to let them know that okay, this is the response. The same way some people are doctors and that this is my own calling, but we are here for you, and even if you did, made a mistake in school, or even if you fought in school, because how come sometimes other children would fight and it's still okay, but if you got into a brawl or something, it's like a child is a child. There's some things children would do, and you just let them know that, well, that was not right. Jesus will not be happy about it. If parents really took time to took time, or had enough time to follow up their children, and not having to leave them in the hands of Sunday school teachers and aunties and uncles and missionaries. I think a lot of the things that the children of ministers struggle with, especially emotionally and psychologically, will not be there. And then my fourth point will be overall parenting, especially for ministers of the gospel. It has come to light that many of the times the ministers of the gospel are way more stricter than normal parents. And we don't know if it's just because you know the Bible and everything. And then the children of ministers will be wishing that they had the parents of normal churchgoers, because they are more liberal, more easy. There's more fun in their house. They are more happy, they're happier. They're happier. People want to go around, people want to go to their own house than come to your own house, because your own house is always more tense, it's more, everything is just spiritual. And yeah, life is spiritual, but we are on earth. And children want to enjoy being around. Children want to just live life. They want to go to the park. They want to do fun things. Yes, it's good to go to church, but it needs to be I think there should be a balance of knowing how to incorporate interesting things and admitting somebody interesting things, in their life, and not just only church and church. Like I think it was Auntie Paintola that mentioned sometimes children are in church for hours and hours and hours, and they can't go home, they can't rest because they have to be in church, and maybe it's only one car that has to take them all back home. So this all these things, and just imagine having all of this day in and week in, week out. After a while, it takes a toll on these people, especially when they become adolescent and young adults. They don't really want to have anything to do with all of this, because how come I have friends that are just like Christians and their life, they seem happier. Even their parents seem happier, seem more in love than my dad and mom. That's how they see it. After a while, as children begin to have more knowledge, they begin to compare. They see things, they see other people, and they're like, okay, if that is it, then I don't even want to be in this faith, or I don't want to go this path. I'd rather be normal where I can have a happier life, if that makes sense. So another challenge pastors' kids, children go through is, you're very well known. Everybody sort of, are you not this person's daughter or son? You're very well. People know you, but at the same time, they don't know you. They know you because of your parents and their ministry, but they don't really get to know you. But after many of the time, these people feel like they should have a say in your life, because they feel like, oh, I know you now. Your dad is and many of the time they don't really know them. They only just know us in quotes because of our parent, but you don't really know who we are. And this becomes a lot of this puts a lot of stress and strain on the young person, because you feel so exposed, and people are giving opinions about you as though they know you, and they don't really know who you are. They don't know who you are, they don't know your values, but they just feel like they have a say in your life. So that's the thing. There's a lot of scrutiny that goes into pastors' children, ministers' children, a lot more scrutiny than an average child, and you have to struggle with that. You don't forget you're still struggling with the identity, just struggling with the fact that you're growing up. You have the adolescent challenges and everything, and being a young adult, and then you have the whole scrutiny and all these people in your daddy's church or your ministry expecting unexpected, unrealistic expectations about you. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of pressure on children and young people, and it can actually lead a lot of young people to depression, to hating the God that their parents serve, hating the faith, not wanting to do. And I realize that many of the young people, as they become young adults, and they're just like, I'm just waiting to leave the house. immediately I leave the house, I'm not going to church. I'm not having anything. I just want to be normal. I just want to be normal. And I think that should not be so. It should be a thing of more of like pride and all. But usually reverse is the case. People, most business children detest, you know, the position they are in. They test what their parents are doing because of all the things they see. The neglect, not having sufficient time for them. Even sometimes even provision. Many times they say, "Oh, we don't have money. It's because it's God's money, so we can't give it the money." So these are the things they struggle with. And they're like, "It's God's money, but I have my needs. I need to pay for this. I need to pay for that." And they're like, "Well, so things like that actually affect children as well, or ministers' children in general. Um, so yeah. So you see this picture, and this is like, you just want to be in the world and just be normal, but then you just feel like there's this big eyes watching over you. Everywhere you go to, you feel so watched, you feel so condemned, you feel so you're scrutinized, and just a lot of pressure. You just feel that passive energy, that passive negative energy around you many of the time. So eventually, it actually makes the child become so paranoid. It makes you begin to exhibit spirit of fear because you feel you're being watched, you're being judged, you're being. So it's a lot of things that are happening, both on the physical and the spiritual. And after a while, you just begin to say that even emotionally, you're battling with fear, you're battling with depression, you're battling with anxiety because of the pressure that comes with being in the role as a pastor's child, as a minister's child. So there was an example that someone gave. He said, okay, his father, um, some pastors, let me put it that way, some pastors would take the situation at home and use them as cite them as examples during service. And that's so terrible, because that's supposed to be the little privacy, which is not even privacy, because usually pastors' family don't have, you barely or rarely see families in the pastor's family having their single unit. It's always like people are involved, there are people there, there's third party, fourth party. You don't have that singular family unit. So there's no family intimacy. But the little that goes on in the family, some men of God will take the story and go and use cite as an example, like this story that I put here. The little guy was bullied and his bicycle was taken, and the father went to go and preach about it on Sunday and say, yeah, these are the things that happen. Even following Christ is not easy, the cross and all of that. And the boy was so traumatized because people would even stop him and ask him questions about it. And he was like, this is supposed to be something very personal to me, something very intimate, that's something very traumatic to me. It was not for public consumption. So many times, these are some of the mistakes that men of God do. They'll go cite the examples of their children, or what happened in the house, or something like that, and then it becomes a general public information. Many of the time, the children don't like that. It really does hurt their feelings. It causes a lot of embarrassment, a lot of sadness, and all of that. Yeah. I think I mentioned a sense of being on display. You just feel constantly watched, constantly judged. You just don't. And many of the times, ministers' children can't be themselves because you feel so you're always judged or watched. So you can't just be you. And many times you end up realizing that you don't even really know who you are because you didn't have enough time to develop who you are, because you are trying to fit into an expectation of maybe the ministry your father is, or the whatever, or the status your parents are. And then you see children, they grow up and they didn't really, really explore their potentials. And it's just many of the times is when they grow and they now begin to say, okay, who am I? Who am I? What did God really put? Okay, now that I'm not under daddy, mommy, now I can ask, okay, let me begin to find out who I am. And that shouldn't be so. Many of the, that should not be. That should not be. Um, so I'm just trying to, because of the time, and many of them I'm just summarizing them as well. Skip this slide. So yeah, the challenges of being known, like I said, many times there's some children that come from very mega ministries, the popularity and the early exposure, the sense of feeling important and feeling so powerful can actually lead them into a negative, like a negative dive, because there's a level of exposure that a child should not even have, or a level of, that some ministers' children would throw their children into such situation or experiences. And because of that, they begin to have a false sense of importance, even as they're growing, and they're in that bubble of their ministry, and they think they're so special and everything. And because they are not exposed to what's happening outside the ministry, they think, the world will always attend to them, or the world will always bow to them. And then when they now finally maybe grow out of that bubble, they can handle the challenges that life bring, because they're used to, having that sense of unnecessary importance, or the sense of being extra special, and then they begin to struggle. They begin to struggle with identity. They begin to think of the world as a bad place, because when they're now full-grown adult, they realize that nobody really cares. You have to discover life yourself. You have to be ready. You have to create your own relevance. It's not really handed over. Many of the times, it's not really handed over to you when you become an adult, unless if you really remain in your parents' ministry, where because of your parents, then you can be relevant. So yeah, so that's the challenges of being very known as a pastor's child. I'm going to go to the next slide. The slide is acting up. Okay, so one major thing, or one of the major things that I've noticed about pastor children, is that they struggle with doubt, even as adults, because it's okay, we know Christ, we know God is there for us, but is he really, really there? Because maybe because of how their fathers represented God in how he parented them, it actually imprints some kind of quite a number of questions in their heart. And they begin to ask, is this for real? Is it really true? Does Jesus really love me? Or is my relationship really for real? Or okay, or am I really saved? Because I'm saved, but I still have these things. And many of the time, because parents are so busy, very busy with different programs and activities, they're not able to sit down. The parents are not able to sit down, and the children are not able to find the time to be able to even say, okay, daddy, this is what I'm struggling with in terms of even my faith. And we're not even talking about all the other things that is going on in life, because many of the time ministers are too spiritual to even know what's going on in life, going on outside the church. But now, even in terms of the faith, how did you see many men of God having time for their children to be like, okay, is there anything about your faith you're struggling with? And then from that, they can now clarify things and help them through. Hardly, how did you see? And even if they do it, it's not as often. So many of the time, there's a lot of gaps, and children struggle with, what they've read in the Bible, or what they heard, or what they see, and they want to discuss with their parents, but their parents are so busy. They've traveled to another country. They don't have the nurturing they need in terms of their faith. They don't have enough growth. Sorry, my daughter is knocking. Okay. So one of the difficult things pastors' children also struggle with, that's the number two. Number one is doubt. Number two is also borrowed belief. It's usually what's handed down, and that's why you see many of the time ministers' children, they would have they would come out for altar call and come out for altar call and come out for they would give their life to Christ over and over and over again. I did that so many times, and I was like, when am I really going to now be? When am I finally now going to say I'm born again? This is stressing me so much, because I think I'm born again, and then maybe tomorrow I do something wrong. I don't think I'm really born again. That's because we also didn't have that solid foundation of the revelation of Christ and the love of Christ. Like for example, I've given, only God knows, over hundreds and hundreds of times I've come out for different altar calls. Brian Bonke, I would go out. Anything that my parents take me, I would go out. And usually it's more out of just fear and guilt and confusion. And I was just say, okay, Lord, I want you to forgive me again. I'm brand new. I'm brand new. But what the Lord did in my own story is that the Lord had to take me out of Nigeria now. Like I said, now I was not a young adult. I'd finished my first degree and I went to medical school. So I could have I had a little more understanding. I could now take time away from the pressure. Nobody knew me there. Nobody knew me as a pastor's child. Now I can now begin to know God for myself. And it was while I was in medical school that I now got saved for real. Now, my testimony is very profound because one of my friends was the one that led me to Christ. He is a pastor's child as well. He's a pastor of one of the biggest ministries in Nigeria, and he was very wayward in medical school, so wayward, and he would, in fact, at some point we started getting very worried because we were all pastor's children, saved, but at the same time not really saved. This guy was not becoming, he would smoke so much that even on the street he would think to himself, and we would just laugh and say, oh, well, the prayer, your father's prayer will help you. And then one day he calls me and he's like, oh, Elona, do you know I'm now saved? I got saved. I'm like, are you serious? You're really, as in this time, because we know, because we are pastor children, so we know how many times we've gone out. So for real, I'm like, he said, man, for real, for real. I saw what of this smoking and everything. He said, stop. I said, he stopped. I saw you last week. I saw you like 2 weeks ago on this. He said, stop. And I was like, what? I said, so you too, Sana said, so you too, you become saved. For real, Murphy. I said, Murphy, I want to. I want to, like, this, the kind of say that I don't have to go back. And I was like, we can do it over the phone now. And I'm like, are you serious? And this is somebody that just got saved. And then he said, yeah, just say after me. I'm like, Murphy, are you really praying? Are you saying? And I said, okay, I'll say after you. I'll say it. So if it's for real, if you can help me this time around, like, since you say you've been saved for a whole week or two, I think I can't remember exactly. If you've been saved for a whole week or two, so that means you know what you're saying, and and then over the phone, and I gave my life to Christ, and it was like, Lord, this time around, we want it for real. For Elon, I just want it. And I was like, yeah, Lord, I want this to be the last time. I've asked you so many times to help me. I don't want to be, I want to know that I'm safe for real. And immediately after that prayer over the phone, I felt different for the very first time. And it was for real this time. And that was in 2012, January 4th, 2012. And my life has never remained the same because this time around, as a pastor's kid, I was led to Christ, not in my parents' ministry, not by anybody, but by a struggling pastor's kid like me. But I just become saved, and he felt he was saved for real, and he thought he could lead me to Christ also for real, if that makes sense. And that's how I actually became saved for real. And of course, the Lord started using us. We now had a prayer team, and it was like a whole tornado because people could not believe that Murphy is saved. And then like, I mean, what's going on? What's going on? Saved? Like, how can you people be saved? How, and the Lord really used us mightily, signs and wonders, and it was amazing. And it was amazing. It was really amazing. And we won a lot of souls. The Lord used us to win a lot of souls to Christ back in medical school. So many times, many ministers' children struggle with their faith because it's just borrowed down to them, but they don't have the personal relationship. They don't really know God for themselves. And many times, what I've come to realize that God take them out of the scene where they can now find God themselves, and they can now take time to grow and nurture their relationship. They don't have daddy or mommy, lording it over their heads. Yeah, so and that challenge will be no room for questions. Young people, minister students, they have so many things, they hear so many things, they are exposed to so many things, but there's nobody to talk. They can't talk. Okay, sorry, I thought it was me. Sorry. So there's no room for questioning. There's no time. Nobody is a whole mass of people, but there's still nobody. You feel like you have all these people, but you have nobody. So when you're going through the life and all these stages, you have so many questions. Who do you run to? Who do you talk to? You don't have your parents to talk to because they're so busy. You end up talking to your friends. They give their own advice. You struggle with doubt, you struggle with confusion, you struggle with fear, anxiety. So this is some of the things that pastors' children go to. Then an undefined identity. I think I mentioned something like that. Because of all that's going on or goes on from the ministry, the things you're exposed to in the ministry, the things you even see behind the stage, and because of the expectation of the society, pastors' children struggle with, like, who am I really? Okay, just remove the fact that remove my parent from the picture, the ministry from my picture. How do I even find who I really am? And they struggle so much with identity. A lot of them have a lot of identity crisis. Yeah, and I'm getting towards the end of my slide. So now the question is, must preachers choose between family and ministry? Like we can see in this picture, the pastor is trying to maybe prepare a sermon, and you can see the mom is unhappy. The child also needs attention, and many of the time, men of God struggle with them with the balance. And I think it's something that should be constantly reminded to our parents that the family is the first ministry. If we get the family right, if the children and the family can be saved for real and be in a good place. Not saying that life is not perfect, so we're not saying the perfect family, but if the children can come to, like the Bible says, unity of faith, I think that's the most important thing. Because many times men of God think it's the ministry that is more important, or the winning of souls, or the thousands of souls. But the Bible says, if you're faithful with little, he will give you more. So the very first one he gave unto us, and now I'm speaking also as a minister of the gospel, is our family. We need to get our family right. We need to strike that balance. I don't think the Lord is actually would be pleased to see your own family, your own seed, struggling and lacking attention, lacking affection, lacking provision, and then the ministers are out there doing big things. I don't think the Lord is impressed by that. The little things matter as well as the big things. And yeah. And my next slide will be, so the most important thing, first of all, is our relationship with God. As the man of God or a woman of God ministers, first thing is the first thing that the children should understand is that your relationship with God is the most important thing, not even outside your relationship, your personal relationship with God, because the children watch your relationship, how you relate with the Lord, how you relate with Holy Spirit. And the second thing is your relationship with your wife or with your husband. Because I think men of God and parents, men and women of God, should bear in mind that these children that we have today, very little running around, they're going to be grown one day, and they're going to begin to think for themselves. They're going to see things that you don't even know, or even your actions, even much more than your action. They can read much more than what you're displaying to them, because after a while they grow and they can comprehend things. So it's very important that they see that God is first, and then your spouse, the dad and mom is second, and then they as children, your relationship with the children comes third, and then later on ministry. Because I've seen a ministry where parents, ministers put so much emphasis on the ministry, and then these same people, like I was speaking to my friend, she's also a doctor here in the UK, 2 days ago, and she's married now. And I said, oh, I've been asked to do like my experience at the pastor's care, and she is also a bishop's daughter from Nigeria. She was like, oh my God, I don't even want to go there. And now she's married and she has 2 children. She was like, I don't know if I'm still suffering from post-traumatic experience, but I just noticed that I and all my siblings decided I was not going to have more than 2 children, and I don't know if because we saw how my parents gave so much to the church and to the ministry, and when my dad was sick, all these people that we helped did not come. They did not come to help our parents. They just left us, and just because, and then when we were at home, there were just so many people, so many, we didn't even have time. So she said she doesn't just understand, but she noticed that all the 6 of them just only have 2 children, and she thinks that they're suffering from something deeper than she can even put in words. And I was like, wow. And this is just one of the many things that she said. She's like, oh no, I don't think I want to have more children, because I don't even want to start remembering the fact that we had so many people in the house, and there was no time for any of us. And so yeah, so it's very important for children to know that the parents have, that the children are priority, even much more than the ministry. Because there's an example, then another person mentioned that, oh, I come home and I see my father watching, listening to messages, and I want to talk to him, or I want to tell my mom about something, but they're so engrossed in preparing for messages, and so I there's no even room to try and chip in, so I just give up. And that's very terrible. So just imagine all the questions and all the things they want to, even the connection they want to have with their parents, but they're not able to have it. And then that's many of the time it leads them to just detesting the ministry, because now I'm struggling between my parents and the ministry. Ministry is taking my parents away from me. That's how many of the time the children feel. They don't feel like they're priority. They don't feel they're as important. And truthfully, many of the men of God, because they have this high and this excitement and this rush that comes when you're out there on the stage, they will rather go for that than have that quietness in the house where nobody watches you, where you're just a dad and nothing extra. So that's why many of the time you tend to see them going from one program to another because of all the honor, the attention, whereas their children suffering, their spouses are suffering, and things that matter the most are actually suffering. And in conclusion, you know, quite a number of us, including myself, have been through struggles, and the average children might not. And I probably may not have mentioned so many. Like I said, I would still not mention so many because I just feel like I still need to respect and have that my own privacy. But at the end, many of us, because the Lord was able to bring us out of that bubble of, being in the ministry or around the ministry, we're able to know God for ourselves. And even though now we're serving the Lord, we're doing so with scars, some with traumatic experiences, but we know that it's all part of the stories, and it's all part of what we now look out for in our own next generation, not to allow it to repeat. And I must actually commend our parents, because many of the times they did what they thought was right. Many of the times they thought they were doing the right thing, especially in our parents' generation, where they felt, when you suffer and labor, you're doing it for God. The more you suffer, the more it feels as though God is happy and God is commending you for it. But now we've seen that many of the times that's not even the case. You need to be able to strike a balance. You need to be able to have time for your family. You need to be able to make the things of God quite exciting for your children so that they can also follow in that path. So and I stand here today, a child of the minister of the gospel, which I'm very thankful for, because my parents also, they've actually incorporated a whole lot of things that other children might not have, a lot of values and opportunities, I must be honest with. And yes, there might be scars and experiences, but then we are thankful that we had the opportunity, and we had the opportunity to be children of minister, children of parents that are serving God. I don't think there's any better position or opportunity that can be given than for us to say that we're children of ministers of God. Now I am bold enough to say, oh yeah, my dad is a minister of the gospel, which I wouldn't tell people before. I would be so ashamed about it, and I'll be so traumatized about it. But I think God knows how to bring out beauty in our mistakes, in our parents' mistake, because many of the time the Lord knows that they didn't do it intentionally. And now the Lord is teaching our own generation to see clearly try not to repeat them again. So I just want to thank everyone for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the session.